And welcome back. It's time for our Capitol Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitolBeatOK.com. And Pat, obviously this is a big week as the legislative session officially gets underway, and it starts off, as always, with the State of the State, the third one from Governor Mary Fallin. What were some of the highlights?
There were many highlights. First of all, I try to confess error. There was no mention of drones.
Which you predicted.
I was kind of having fun with that issue because she's been stressing drones manufacturing. And seriously, she did include references to actually expanding aerospace manufacturing. So I was sort of right.
Right.
But getting to the specifics, the governor did indeed call for a modest tax reduction, 0.25%. Which would bring the state's level from 5.25 to 5%. And of course, in Oklahoma, by the time you earn less than $10,000 of income, you're at the top rate. So that would affect everybody if it goes into effect. She also, an awful lot of the speech, if you think of Department of Health, of Human Services, and the things she talked about in the Department of Health, Healthcare Authority, if you combine all that and think of it as health, the proportion of her speech devoted to healthy living and to health-related issues, including her comments on Medicaid, added up to probably 25 to 30% of her total prepared text of 10 pages. That was kind of interesting. She ardent anti-smoking themes and gave personal reasons from her family history for being anti-smoking, said she would support, which was kind of a big deal, she will support the effort to give localities more power to go beyond what the state does in terms of regulating tobacco use. So all of that was interesting, not necessarily what you expected. Now, things we did expect in addition to the small tax cut, she talked about the Department of Transportation continuing the 8-year plan. You know, it's kind of important to remember that for a long time we didn't really have a plan on transportation. We got one late in the last decade, and Fallin is working with the legislative leadership on something that's really pretty bipartisan to keep that focus moving forward. That's big because, as you know, bridges and roads, we have a lot of deficiencies, but they're methodically making those up. Costs a lot of money, but it's probably broadly supported. All right. By the way, that'll make Oklahoma City Senator Kyle Loveless, who's the vice chairman of transportation, he's real happy about that. A newbie at the legislature, yes, but very focused on the transportation issues. So that's a thumbnail kind of the highlights. I thought it was a longer than I expected speech and a little bit not as focused on right-sizing rhetoric and government reform as I might have expected, but a moderately conservative speech.
All right, we've been through the first week of the session. Has anything come out of this first week at the Capitol?
Well, her restatement of her views on Medicaid was significant because it came in a week when a handful of Republican governors began to crumble on the Medicaid expansion issue under the Federal Affordable Care Act. We'll see if she sticks to her guns. Fiscally, it's hard to see how in the long run that's affordable for the country, let alone for Oklahoma. And that's been Fallin's reason for not supporting that expansion, even though Oklahoma is obviously going to expand Medicaid spending. That's one thing that's important to remember. It's not like that the needs of that population are being ignored by state government, because they're not. But she did restate that, and in the context nationally, that was kind of significant. We'll see, you know, how staunch she remains on that. Fallin has an underlying conservatism, but she's growing government some again in this budget. So it'll be interesting to see how she reconciles the modest expansion of government with her underlying desire that she stated repeatedly to right-size government.
Now, the state had a visit from an out-of-state conservative, Grover Norquist, this week. What did he have to say?
Well,
what kind of message did he?
Grover is a great speaker. He's always entertaining. He speaks in very provocative language, and he did so again this week. He talked about the Takings Coalition being the left broadly defined, and the Leave Us Alone Coalition being the conservative side. Spoke to members of the Americans for Prosperity. Thumbnail sketch, very upbeat actually, and hopeful about the future despite the results of the last election. the disappointment in the presidential race. And Norquist is here to kind of pound on the Republicans and say, stick to it, make that tax cut, restrain spending, hang in there. That was what he had to say.
You can read more about this and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great day.